The International Newsnet World Report is a national television news show available in more than 30 million homes. We broadcast daily real news the networks won't tell you. We are solely viewer-supported. That means you. You can donate at our website, inworldreport.net. We hope you find the following interview informative and helpful.
Professor John MEARSHEIMER of the University of Chicago and Professor Stephen Walt of the John Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on World Report. We're very honored to have you on.
Nice to be here.
Your newly released book, The Israel Lobbying versus Foreign Policy, has been surrounded by a considerable amount of controversy. Much of the mainstream media has been hostile. There's a visual directed against you. Prove your case?
I think a number of the attacks that have been leveled at us and at the book are at least consistent with many of the arguments that we made about how difficult it is to talk about the subject in a sort of open and candid and civil way in the United States. Certainly the fact that some people, not everyone by any means, but some people immediately labeled it anti-Semitic or label us as anti-Semites is the same sort of thing that happened to President Jimmy Carter when he published a book on the same subject last year. And again, we find this unfortunate because these are issues that Americans and indeed everyone around the world ought to be able to discuss in an open and candid fashion. And when you smear people with unjustified attacks like that, it doesn't contribute to the kind of conversation that ought to be happening in every democracy.
The negative response directed towards the paper that you released last year with the same name. Senator Fox, when you wrote the book, because in the introduction to your book, you appear to be almost apologizing to the Israel lobby.
No, I don't think that's true. Certainly it was not our intention to apologize to the Israel lobby. There's no question that the book is different than the article, and we, in effect, took into account a number of the criticisms that were leveled at us and tried to respond to them in a responsible and smart way. But we did not trim our sails in any meaningful way, nor did we change our basic arguments. They're all the same. They're expanded, to be sure, and there's some subjects that we didn't deal with in the original article that we deal with in the book. But I think that you can tell from all the controversies that is surrounding the book, which is very similar to the controversy surrounding the article, that our critics don't feel that we changed our basic arguments in any meaningful way. And this is probably one issue on which we agree with our critics.
Barack Obama was considered an anti-war candidate by many in the Democratic Party who treated your book as pressure from the Israel lobby. So which presidential candidate for the 2008 election do you feel will stand up to the Israel lobby, if any?
Well, it's impossible to know what any president or candidate will do once in office. It's obvious already that all of the major candidates have gone through enormous lengths to demonstrate their personal devotion to Israel and that they will do nothing to change the U.S.-Israel relationship. Now, I think we can all hope that whoever gets elected, they adopt a somewhat more conditional policy, that they don't necessarily do all of the things that they've promised in the campaign, because that would be better for the United States, and as we argue in our book, it would actually be better for Israel as well. But I don't think you can pick a candidate right now who's going to be better or worse on this issue based on what they're saying in the campaign.
Well, what about Ron Paul?
Well, I don't think there's a serious chance that Ron Paul could be president of the United States.
And would that be because he doesn't support the Israel lobby?
That's one reason.
But probably not the only reason.
Surely.
You'd be surprised at the grassroots efforts that we've seen behind Ron Paul. In the introduction to your book, you state that, I'm quoting, the U.S. stands willing to come to Israel's defense, unquote. But Israel is reputed by credible sources to have at least 200 nuclear weapons. In any case, Israel does have the ability to launch whatever nuclear weapons it has on Europe, Iraq, Iran, and Africa, the rest of the Middle East, as well as India, Pakistan, and Russia. We, at the United States, do not have a formal Senate ratified defense treaty with Israel by Israel's choice. believe that America should expend the blood of our children and our increasingly precious and precarious tax dollars fighting Israel's wars when Israel is capable of fighting for herself?
Well, first of all, the United States is in all likelihood not going to have to go to Israel's defense because, as you point out, Israel has a few hundred nuclear weapons of its own, and nuclear weapons are the ultimate deterrent. Furthermore, it has the most powerful conventional military forces in the region. There is little likelihood that Israel's survival will be threatened at any point in the foreseeable future. Israel is in a very secure position. Our point is simply that if, as a result of unforeseen circumstances, Israel's survival is threatened, that the United States should go to great lengths to protect Israel.
Why?
Because we think that having a Jewish state is a good thing. We're strong supporters of the state of Israel. We're not strong supporters of the present relationship between the United States and Israel. We think it's unhealthy for both countries. And we think Israeli policy, especially in the occupied territories, is misguided, and that the United States should make that clear to Israel and use its significant leverage to change Israeli policy. But we're not hostile to the state of Israel. We view Israel much the way we view Britain and Germany and France. If Britain's survival was at stake, we feel strongly that the United States should go to great lengths to help Britain survive. We're not interested in seeing Britain disappear from the map of the earth any more than we are Israel.
One of the reasons for Israel to exist is to provide a Jewish state, but inherently that's apartheid.
Not necessarily. It is apartheid if Israel goes out and incorporates the West Bank and the Gaza Strip into a greater Israel, and then ends up with a greater Israel that has more Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, than Israeli Jews inside of it. And there is evidence, as Jimmy Carter correctly pointed out, that Israel is headed in the direction of becoming an apartheid state. But there's no reason that Israel has to pursue that misguided policy. And in fact, what we argue, and I think most sensible people argue, is that Israel should abandon the occupied territories and allow for the creation of a viable Palestinian state. So that we don't
have a one-state solution. Why should there be a Jewish state? I mean, the Gypsies were equally as persecuted during the Nazi Holocaust as the Jews were, and the Gypsies have never had a state. They've been equally as homeless.
We're not going to talk about the issue of the Gypsies.
Oh, no, what I'm saying is that why should the Jews especially have their own state as opposed to, say, any other persecuted race or religion?
Well, we believe in the principle of national self-determination, and I'm not going to, again, discuss the Gypsy issue, which is